Hi, if you record your name and reason for calling.
I got some. I want to hear. I'm not being on the phone, Milon. I'm on call at all. I do quite about everything. At the beginning, game of playing Latin. No, meeting, I want, but I mean, you're not my way. Yeah. Same guru, but I've been here. I don't know for long. Yeah. I'm bad. Then. Then 100%. So I get part 1 and part 2. You should call 2 terabytes Maya. But you knew 1 terabyte Malo, but 2 terabytes Maya. 2 terabytes. So, come back to you. Come out that paraffin. Alright, yeah. Let's go. Wow. Let's go. I can't know what support it. Wow. Alright. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Can I ask, honestly, I was sitting talking
exactly what kind of defense they were going to play. They just did it so well. That eventually turned out to be their downfall because when we started that drive, 91.
the only thing I had in common with my had in common with you on the West Coast was the fact that we were on the same continent. And then we predated the existence of the United States. And then we were regarded as the West continent as being excluded from those continents. Well, what's our immigration laws flies us to the end of our that's the interpretation that makes no sense. And when they passed the 14th Amendment to declare that the formerly enslaved were now U.S. citizens, they made a distinct point in Mexico. And that exclusion of them, it's not a slight. It's an acknowledgement that we are different, that we are not American, we are not U.S. citizens. And we would not be U.S. citizens as a result of the 14th Amendment. Now, 50 years later, they would pass a law to finally put this box around us. They would pass the Indian Citizenship Act in 1924. 1924. We're talking about the 20th century. They passed a law declaring that we were citizens. But nothing in this idea of declaring us citizens would deprive us of our
For WPFW News in Washington, I'm Sue Goodwin. Today is Friday, December 26th. Here are some headlines. The United States has launched airstrikes against Islamic State-affiliated groups in northwestern Nigeria. According to President Trump, these strikes had a religious justification and started off another step in his so-called anti-terror campaign with no definitive end date. WPFW's Noah Portner has more.
Yesterday, on Christmas Day, the Trump administration launched airstrikes in northern Nigeria, signaling the start of operations in the region. A Trump administration official said that Christmas was chosen as the symbolic start date in an operation that does not appear to have a finite end date or goal. What is known, however, is that the Nigerian government knew of these strikes beforehand and welcomed the attack on ISIS-linked militias. Nigerian citizens on the ground reacted with surprise and panic to the airstrikes, and at least one has since complained that the Nigerian government did not properly safeguard its citizens. President Trump claimed that the attack was necessary to protect Christians, even though sectarian violence strikes at both Christians and Muslims in the country. Nigeria's government went out of its way to emphasize how extremism affects both sides. The total damage from the airstrikes are unknown, although several fatalities are expected. The attacks in Nigeria, like those in the Caribbean, were carried out without consulting Congress, leading some congressmen to once again criticize Trump's violent and secretive foreign policy. From WPFW and WBAI, I'm Noah Portner.
Another step in other news. Christmas Eve did not play out as planned at the Kennedy Center this year. The center's annual Christmas Eve jazz performance was called off after drummer and vibraphone player Chuck Red, who has hosted the show for nearly 2 decades, said that he canceled the show after learning the cultural arts institution was adding Donald Trump to its name. As of last Friday, the building's facade reads the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts, a decision made by Trump's hand-picked board, which he himself now chairs. Chuck Red is not the only artist to protest recent changes at the Kennedy Center. Lin-Manuel Miranda canceled a planned production of Hamilton after learning Trump took over the board and named himself chairman. In related news, a new federal lawsuit filed on Monday in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia challenges the Kennedy Center Board of Trustees' decision to rename the Kennedy Center. The suit was filed by Ohio Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, an ex officio trustee of the center. The suit alleges the board exceeded its authority granted by Congress and requests that a judge declare it to be void. The lawsuit comes as President Trump pursues a campaign to rename institutions in the nation's capital in his own image. For WPFW News in Washington, I'm Sue Goodwin.
You are listening to the coolest cat in radio, Bobby Brooks, DC, on Fantastic Friday.
Yesterday I saw a big girl crying. Yesterday I saw a big girl crying. I walked up and asked what's wrong.
president this year. That included dismantling large sections of the federal government, taking over the power of the purse during the government shutdown by directing spending that was prohibited at that time, and turning the clawback of billions of spending that had been approved by Congress.
Gonzalez said there's the prospect of another government shutdown in January, in addition to calls for Washington to address an affordability crisis that will likely dominate on the campaign trail. A winter storm warning is in effect for New York City starting this afternoon. NPR's Sarah Ventura reports the city is bracing for what could be its biggest snowfall in several years.
The city is expecting somewhere around 7 to 8 inches of snow, and according to the National Weather Service, at the height of the storm, peak snowfall rates could be 1 to 2 inches per hour. That's because this storm is front-loaded, meaning that most of the snow will happen in the first 5 to 7 hours. This makes things particularly challenging on what is a busy travel weekend. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said that city agencies have been coordinating and are prepared for the winter weather system while they continue to monitor conditions closely. The city has issued a travel advisory, and the Department of Sanitation is pre-deploying hundreds of salt spreaders to treat roadways with plows at the ready. Sarah Ventry, NPR News, New York.
It's NPR. Exposure to air pollution during pregnancy could raise the risk of low birth weight. That's according to new research, and certain periods of pregnancy may be especially sensitive, as NPR's Jonathan Lambert reports.
Air pollution can cause all sorts of problems, from aggravating asthma to increasing risk of stroke. Researchers have also found that air pollution can lower birth weight, which can cause problems for newborns. But it was unclear whether there were certain windows of pregnancy that matter to a developing fetus. A team of researchers combined localized measurements of air pollution across the United States with birth weight data for over 16,000 other newborn pairs. In the journal JAMA Network Open, researchers report that higher air pollution was associated with lower birth weight. Exposure during early pregnancy, especially the first 5 weeks, had an even greater impact. Male newborns were slightly more susceptible to the effects of pollution than female newborns. Jonathan Lambert, NPR News.
Thailand's Prime Minister, Anutin Chanvirakul, says his defense minister will attend peace talks with Cambodia Saturday to try and end deadly clashes along their shared border. To date, an estimated 40 to 80 people have been killed and hundreds of thousands have been displaced. The State Department says Defense Secretary Marco Rubio reaffirmed the U.S. is prepared to facilitate those discussions to ensure peace and stability between Cambodia and Thailand. Officials from both sides have been meeting since Wednesday in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. That is the chair of ASEAN. I'm Dwahli Saikautau, NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One with the Capital One Quicksilver Card. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at NocFound.org.
On this week's Wait, sportscaster Bob Costas explains how his high school baseball coach ended his playing career.
He actually said to me, "You're not bad with the glove and you can run a little bit, but I don't think you can hit your weight, and I don't think you weigh 130.
On Peter Sagal this week, we talked to Bob Costas, plus some athletes who were not encouraged to pursue another line of work, like Hall of Famer Jim Rice. Join us for this week's news quiz from NPR.